In Arizona territory, a beautiful widow orchestrated the deadliest game ever played in the American West. 3 ruthless bounty hunters would fight dirty for her hand in marriage. What they didn't know was that she wasn't looking for love. She was hunting for revenge. Watch till the end to see how one woman brought the most dangerous men in the West to their knees. Before we dive into the story, if you love tales of justice and revenge from the Wild West, click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss our daily stories. Drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now let's continue with the story. The stagecoach wheels stopped turning just as the sun painted Copper Creek red as blood. Eleanor Calhoun stepped down, her black mourning dress catching the desert wind. Every man on that dusty street turned to stare, not because she was beautiful, though her honey-colored hair and emerald eyes could stop a stampede. They stared because she was rich, widowed, and alone. Inside the Broken Spoke Saloon, Silas McGrath set down his whiskey. They called him the Bone Collector because he always brought his bounties back dead, easier to transport that way. His scarred hands had ended 43 lives for money. Across the room, Jedediah Cross cleaned his rifle with methodical precision. He preferred long-distance kills, said it was cleaner. Dutch Van Horn sat in the corner, dealing cards with fingers that had strangled men in their sleep. These 3 had never worked together. They were competitors, rivals who'd kill each other for the right bounty. But today, they all watched the same woman walk into the church. Eleanor knelt at a fresh grave marked, "Thomas Calhoun, beloved husband." She wept beautifully, each tear perfectly timed. The preacher mentioned Thomas had left her everything: the ranch, the gold mine shares, enough money to buy half the territory. Silas arrived at the grave first, offering his handkerchief. Jedediah appeared minutes later with fresh flowers. Dutch brought water from the well, claiming the heat was too much for a grieving woman. Each believed he was alone in his intentions. Eleanor accepted all 3 gestures with practiced grace. She told Silas about her fear of being alone. She mentioned to Jedediah how her husband's death remained mysterious. To Dutch, she confided that strange men had been watching her ranch. That night, she sat in her hotel room and removed a hidden photograph from her luggage. Thomas smiled back at her, alive and happy, before 3 bounty hunters had tortured him to death for a case of mistaken identity. Eleanor kissed the photograph and whispered, "The game begins now, my love." Outside, 3 dangerous men dreamed of a beautiful widow's fortune, never suspecting they were already trapped in her web. The morning brought news of Black Jack Harmon's escape from Yuma prison. $5,000 bounty. Every hunter in Copper Creek would chase that prize, but Silas McGrath had other plans. He slipped into the stable before dawn and drove a nail through Dutch Van Horn's saddle. Not enough to notice, just enough to make the horse lame after 20 miles. Dutch discovered the sabotage too late. His mount collapsed in the desert heat, and by the time he walked back, Silas had already collected Black Jack's corpse. But Dutch wasn't the only one playing dirty. Jedediah Cross had watched Silas from the shadows. He knew about Eleanor's dinner invitation that evening, the one Silas had boasted about in his drunken stupor. The hotel kitchen was empty when Jedediah slipped inside. 3 drops of peyote extract in Silas's whiskey bottle. Not lethal, just enough to make him see demons where there were none. Sure enough, 2 hours before dinner, Silas was stumbling through Main Street, swinging at invisible enemies, cursing at ghosts. Eleanor watched it all from her window. Perfect. She descended the stairs wearing a blue dress that made her eyes shine like desert stars. Jedediah stood waiting with roses he'd stolen from the mayor's garden. "Mr. Cross, how thoughtful, though I was expecting Mr. McGrath. Silas sends his regrets. Sudden illness." Jedediah's smile never wavered. Over dinner, Eleanor let her fingers brush his as she poured wine. She spoke of her late husband's final days, how he'd gone to Silver Rock on business and never returned. The sheriff said bandits, but no body was ever found properly. Just pieces. The memory made her voice crack at just the right moment. "You must think me weak," she whispered. "I think you're the strongest woman I've ever met." Jedediah meant it, which made everything easier. Meanwhile, Dutch had found Silas retching behind the brothel. The bone collector's eyes were wild, pupils like pinpoints. Dutch recognized peyote poisoning immediately. He dragged Silas to the water trough, forced his head under until the visions faded. "Cross did this," Silas gasped. "That snake wants Eleanor for himself." "Eleanor?" Dutch kept his voice neutral. "The widow. She invited me to dinner. Rich as Midas, pretty as sunrise." Dutch said nothing about his own plans for the widow. Instead, he helped Silas to his feet. "Cross needs to learn about consequences." That night, Eleanor met each hunter separately. To Dutch at midnight, bringing medicine for Silas. To Silas at dawn, checking his recovery. Each meeting carefully orchestrated, each man believing he alone held her interest. In her room, she updated her journal. 3 killers dancing to her tune, each one guilty of Thomas's blood. The entries below their names grew longer. Silas's cruelty, Jedediah's deception, Dutch's calculated patience. Soon, she would know exactly how to destroy them. Tomorrow, she would tell them about the man who'd been watching her ranch, the man who might have killed her husband. She smiled, knowing they would tear each other apart to prove their worth. The hunters had become the hunted, and they didn't even know it. Dutch Van Horn found the love letter by accident. It fell from Jedediah's coat during a poker game, and Dutch recognized Eleanor's handwriting instantly. His blood turned cold. Then he spotted Silas purchasing jewelry at Hoffman's store, asking about engagement rings. The truth hit him like a stampede. All 3 were courting the same woman. The Broken Spoke Saloon had seen its share of violence, but nothing like what happened that night. Dutch confronted them both, cards on the table. The accusation hung in the air like gunpowder. "She's playing us," Dutch growled. "You're jealous," Silas spat back. "She chose me." "Funny. She said the same to me." Jedediah's hand moved to his pistol. The first shot came from Silas, not at the hunters, but at the deputy who tried to intervene. The second deputy reached for his rifle, and Jedediah's blade found his throat. Blood pooled on the sawdust floor, while the 3 hunters faced off, guns drawn, fingers trembling on triggers. Eleanor arrived like an angel of mercy, pushing through the crowd. "Stop! Please!" Her cry broke their deadly triangle. She saw the bodies, the blood, and collapsed into carefully calculated hysteria. Each hunter rushed to her aid. She let them carry her to the doctor's office, then insisted on tending their wounds personally. Silas had a gash from flying glass. Jedediah's knuckles were split. Dutch had powder burns on his neck. She treated each in separate rooms, whispering different stories. To Silas, "I'm frightened. Those deputies were asking about Thomas's death. Someone doesn't want the truth revealed." To Jedediah, "There's something I haven't told anyone. Thomas wrote about a threat before he died. A man with a scarred face." To Dutch, "I found this in Thomas's belongings." She showed him a wanted poster, carefully aged and doctored. "They call him Ghostface. I think he killed my husband." That night, while the hunters slept off their violence, Eleanor met her brother Samuel in the abandoned mine shaft outside town. He wore the mask she'd crafted, white leather with no features except eye holes. "They killed 2 lawmen fighting over you," Samuel said. "This is getting dangerous." Those deputies were asking questions about Thomas. "Their death serves us." Eleanor's voice held no mercy. "Tomorrow, start leaving tracks near my ranch. Let them find you. What if they actually catch me?" "They won't. They're too busy watching each other. Silas already suspects Dutch of being Thomas's killer. Jedediah thinks Silas is after my money. Dutch believes they're both unstable. I give it 3 days before one tries to eliminate the others." Samuel studied his sister. "You've changed, Eleanor." "They changed me when they sent back Thomas in 5 separate boxes, claiming bounty on the wrong man." She touched the wedding ring still on her finger. "Each of them held a piece of him. Now, I'll take everything from them piece by piece." Back in town, 3 hunters lay awake, each planning how to eliminate their rivals, each believing Eleanor needed protection, each falling deeper into her perfectly laid trap. The widow had become their obsession, and obsession made even the smartest men blind. The Apache war cry split the dawn like thunder. 30 riders descended on Copper Creek from the northern ridge, torches blazing, rifles cracking against the purple sky. The town bell rang its desperate warning, but half the buildings were already burning. Silas McGrath rolled from his bed, grabbed his Winchester, and started counting targets. Dutch Van Horn took position on the hotel roof. Jedediah Cross disappeared into the smoke, picking off riders from the shadows. For the first time, the 3 hunters worked as one deadly force. Eleanor stood at her window, watching the choreographed chaos. She'd paid the Apache leader, Kuruk, $3,000 for this performance. Not to kill, just to threaten. Create fear. Make heroes of the hunters. But something was going wrong. The raiders were pushing deeper into town than agreed. Silas charged into the street, both pistols blazing. An Apache warrior raised his rifle toward Eleanor's window. Silas dove between them, taking the bullet in his shoulder. He kept firing even as blood soaked his shirt. Eleanor's shock was genuine this time. Dutch swung down from the roof on a rope, crashing through the bank windows where civilians huddled. 3 raiders followed. Dutch fought them with savage precision, his knife painting the walls red. Outside, he could hear Eleanor screaming his name. Jedediah had climbed the church tower. His rifle sang death, each shot finding its mark. But he saw something the others missed. The Apache weren't looting. They were searching for something. Or someone. His scope found Eleanor's brother Samuel trying to flee town on horseback. An Apache rider pursued him, genuine murder in his eyes. The battle turned when Silas dynamited the bridge. Half the raiders were trapped on the wrong side of Copper Creek. Dutch organized the townspeople into a firing line. Jedediah's rifle never stopped. 20 minutes of hell. Then the Apache retreated, leaving 7 dead warriors and 5 dead townsmen. Eleanor rushed to the street, playing the grateful survivor. She kissed Silas's bloody cheek, held Dutch's powder-burned hands, called Jedediah her guardian angel. Each man stood taller, believing they'd earned her love through blood. But in the sheriff's office, she found what she'd really wanted. During the raid, she'd slipped inside and discovered the federal marshal's report about Thomas. 3 bounty hunters had claimed the reward. Their names were all there: McGrath, Cross, Van Horn. They'd split $5,000 for an innocent man's life. That evening, while the town buried its dead, Eleanor found Kuruk's body among the Apache. A knife wound she hadn't ordered, The raid had spiraled beyond her control, but she learned something valuable. When pushed, the 3 hunters could become a single weapon. She just needed to aim them properly. Samuel met her at the gravesite, shaken. "Karuk tried to kill me. Said someone paid him double to make the raid real." Eleanor's mind raced. Someone else was playing games in Copper Creek. Someone who knew her secret. She looked at the 3 hunters standing guard around her, wondering which one had grown a brain. The game had just become deadlier, and Eleanor wasn't the only one rolling dice. The 3 hunters sat at Eleanor's table, passing whiskey and cleaning their guns. She'd invited them together, claiming she needed to make a choice. The tension could have been cut with a butter knife. "Gentlemen, you've all shown incredible bravery, but I can't marry 3 men." Eleanor's fingers traced the rim of her glass. "I need to know who can truly protect me from Ghostface." "Name your terms," Dutch said. Eleanor produced a wanted poster, freshly printed. $50,000 bounty. Ghostface, the man who killed Thomas. Whoever brings him to justice wins my hand. Silas laughed, dark and low. "That's twice what the government's offering for anyone else. I'm adding my own money to the federal bounty. I want him dead or alive." Her green eyes held perfectly manufactured pain. "Do we have an agreement?" They shook on it, each man's grip trying to break the other's fingers. The hunt for Ghostface began at dawn. What the hunters didn't know was that Samuel was already leaving false trails, courtesy of his sister's detailed instructions. Silas found the first clue, a distinctive boot print near Eleanor's ranch, left by Samuel wearing specially made boots. The track led to an abandoned prospector's shack where Eleanor had planted evidence. A map with Thomas's name circled in blood. Silas pocketed it without telling the others. Jedediah took a different approach. He interrogated travelers at gunpoint, forcing them to describe any masked rider they'd seen. When old Pete Hutchins couldn't answer, Jedediah broke 3 of his fingers. When Maria, the baker's daughter, claimed ignorance, he held her father's head underwater until she remembered seeing Ghostface heading south. Dutch played dirtier. He hired 2 criminals to wear white masks and rob a wagon, then killed them publicly, claiming they worked for Ghostface. The town cheered. Eleanor watched from her window as Dutch displayed the bodies, building his reputation as her protector. But Silas had gone furthest into darkness. He captured a traveling preacher who'd given last rites to Thomas. For 6 hours in a cave outside town, Silas extracted every detail about Thomas's final moments. The preacher's screams echoed off the rocks. When Silas finally got a description of the men who'd brought in Thomas's body, he recognized it immediately. 3 hunters working together: McGrath, Cross, and Van Horn. The preacher died knowing too much. Silas buried him deep, his mind spinning. They'd all killed Thomas Calhoun. Eleanor was hunting them. The revelation should have sent him running. Instead, it made him want her more. A woman capable of such elaborate revenge was worth having. That night, Eleanor received 3 different reports. Each hunter claimed to be closing in on Ghostface. Each had committed new atrocities in her name. She updated her journal with their crimes, building a case that would damn them all. Samuel arrived after midnight, disturbed. "Silas tortured a preacher to death. This has to stop." "Soon," Eleanor promised. "They're almost ready to destroy each other. We just need one more push." Outside, 3 hunters prowled the darkness, each following false trails toward a confrontation none would survive intact. Jedediah Cross found the truth in a dead man's pocket. The preacher Silas had tortured had kept a diary, and the final entry changed everything. Thomas Calhoun wasn't an outlaw. He was a missionary doctor, mistaken for Jake, the surgeon Calhoun. 3 bounty hunters had collected his corpse in pieces, each claiming part of the reward. Jedediah's hands shook as he read his own name in the dead man's testimony. He remembered that job, remembered arguing over who got which part of the bounty. They'd been drunk on success, never questioning if they had the right man. The smart play would be confessing to Eleanor. The smarter play was framing the others. Jedediah chose neither. He forged new pages for the diary, implicating only Dutch and Silas. Then he planted it where Eleanor would find it during her morning ride. Dutch had his own secrets to hide. Following Eleanor's correspondence, he'd intercepted a letter from Mexico. Samuel Calhoun, Thomas's brother, was coming to Copper Creek. The photograph included showed a man with distinctive scars, the same scars Dutch had seen on Ghostface's mask when it slipped during their last encounter. Eleanor wasn't hunting her husband's killer. She was protecting him. Dutch burned the letter, but kept the photograph. Blackmail material was worth more than gold. He cornered Eleanor at the millinery shop, speaking low enough that only she could hear. "Your brother makes a convincing ghost face." Eleanor's composure never cracked. "I don't have a brother, Mr. Van Horn." Samuel might disagree. He showed her the photograph. Her smile turned razor sharp. "That photograph could be anyone, but the federal marshal's report listing you as one of Thomas's killers? That's harder to explain." They stood frozen, 2 predators recognizing each other. Dutch understood the game now. The question was whether to expose her or join her. Eleanor made the choice for him. "Silas is becoming unstable. Jedediah found evidence about what you 3 did to Thomas. Soon they'll turn on each other. Or you could help me control the situation. What's your offer?" "Help me destroy them. Take the Ghostface bounty. Leave town wealthy and alive." Before Dutch could answer, screams erupted from the saloon. They rushed outside to find the town's water barrels contaminated with cattle blood. A white mask floated in each one. Ghostface had poisoned the water supply, or so it seemed. Panic spread like wildfire. Silas organized armed patrols. Jedediah demanded they search every building. The townspeople turned suspicious, violent. Neighbor accused neighbor. Eleanor had created chaos with $3 of cow blood and some wooden masks. That night, she met Samuel for what should have been their final planning session. Instead, she found Dutch holding a gun to her brother's head. "New deal," Dutch said. "We all walk away rich, or everyone burns together." Eleanor calculated rapidly. Dutch knowing the truth could ruin everything, or it could accelerate her timeline. She made her choice. "Lower the gun, Dutch. Let me tell you what really happened to Thomas." The game had just gained a wild card, and Eleanor wasn't sure if she held a winning hand anymore. The gunfire started at midnight. Silas had followed Jedediah into the canyon, convinced he was meeting Ghostface. Instead, Jedediah had been tracking Silas, certain he was the real killer. They opened fire simultaneously, lead splitting darkness. Silas took cover behind a boulder, his rifle singing death. Jedediah moved like smoke between the rocks. Each knew the other's tactics, making this a chess match with bullets. Silas shot Jedediah's horse. Jedediah put a bullet through Silas's water canteen. They were too evenly matched to kill clean. Then Dutch arrived with dynamite. The explosion brought down half the canyon wall. Jedediah barely escaped, his leg torn by shrapnel. Silas was trapped under rocks, his gun hand crushed. Dutch stood over them both, deciding who should die first. "Eleanor sends her regards." Dutch raised his pistol toward Silas. "She's playing you!" Silas gasped through pain. "Check her hotel room. Second drawer. See what your precious widow's been hiding." Dutch hesitated. That hesitation saved Silas, as Jedediah's knife found Dutch's ribs. Not fatal, but deep enough to drop him. The 3 hunters lay bleeding under stars, none able to finish the others. Eleanor arrived with Samuel and 2 horses. She'd expected corpses. Instead, she found 3 wounded killers who still drew breath. Time for the truth. "Hello, gentlemen." She stepped into moonlight, no longer playing the grieving widow. "Let me tell you about Thomas Calhoun. He was a doctor. He'd never held a gun. He was traveling to establish a clinic for Apache children when you 3 mistook him for an outlaw." Dutch tried to speak through blood-foam lips. Eleanor continued. "You tortured him for 6 hours. Silas broke his fingers one by one. Jedediah shot his knees to stop him running. Dutch strangled him slowly when he wouldn't confess to crimes he didn't commit. Then you cut him into pieces to make transport easier. 5 pieces. $5,000. 1,000 per piece of my husband." Samuel removed his ghost face mask. The resemblance to Thomas was unmistakable. "My sister's been documenting every crime you've committed while chasing me. The preacher Silas tortured. The innocents Jedediah brutalized. The men Dutch murdered wearing masks. All of it." "The federal marshals will receive everything tomorrow," Eleanor said. "Unless you'd prefer a different ending." Silas laughed, coughing blood. "You think you've won? I sent word to my gang 3 days ago. 20 men are riding here. They'll burn this town to find you." "Your gang's dead." Eleanor's voice held no emotion. "I poisoned their camp's water supply 2 nights ago. The Apache you fought weren't random raiders. They were collecting bounties on your men." Jedediah dragged himself toward his rifle. Samuel kicked it away. "Here's my offer," Eleanor continued. "Write full confessions. Every person you've killed. Every innocent you've destroyed. Sign them, then disappear forever. Or Samuel kills you now, and I deliver your bodies for the ghost face bounty." Dutch saw the logic first. "You documented everything. Even if we kill you, the evidence exists. Hidden in 6 different locations. If I don't check in weekly, it gets delivered." Eleanor knelt beside them. "Choose quickly. You're all losing blood." The hunters exchanged glances. 3 predators caught by prettier prey. The abandoned mine shaft had been Eleanor's confession chamber all along. Lanterns revealed her preparation. Chains bolted to support beams. Medical supplies to keep men alive, but suffering. And photographs covering every wall. Thomas on their wedding day. Thomas treating Apache children. Thomas in pieces, delivered for bounty. Samuel dragged the 3 hunters inside while Eleanor prepared her tools. Not torture instruments, but paper and ink. The truth would be their torment. "Start writing," she commanded. "Every innocent life you've taken." Silas went first, his crushed hand forcing him to write left-handed. The names poured out. 43 bounties, but only 15 were actually guilty. The rest were mistakes, men who looked similar, or simply easier targets than the real outlaws. His confession filled 12 pages. "The Hendricks family," Eleanor read aloud. "You burned their farmhouse because the father resembled an outlaw. 3 children died." "They were harboring criminals," Silas protested. "They were hiding from you." Eleanor showed him a letter. The youngest was 4 years old. Jedediah wrote next, his confession revealing a darker pattern. He didn't just kill for bounties. He created outlaws, planting evidence, forging wanted posters for men who'd crossed him, then collecting rewards on innocents he'd framed. 28 false bounties over 6 years. "Robert Morse," Eleanor said. "You framed him for stage robbery because he won a card game against you. He cheated. He was better than you. His widow killed herself last winter. Their son joined an outlaw gang seeking revenge on bounty hunters. Dutch's confession was the shortest but most damning. He'd been selling information to both sides, alerting outlaws about hunts for money, then betraying them for bounties. Lawmen and criminals alike had died because of his double dealing. "Sheriff Patterson trusted you," Eleanor observed. "You got him killed to collect on Black Bart, who you'd been protecting for months." As they wrote, Eleanor revealed her evidence: bank records showing their blood money, photographs of victims, letters from widows and orphans. She'd spent 2 years building this case, tracking every evil they'd committed. "You want to know the worst part?" Eleanor held up Thomas's medical journal. "He wrote about you 3. He'd seen your wanted posters in town. He prayed for your souls, hoped you'd find redemption. Even as you tortured him, he forgave you." Something broke in Jedediah. Real tears, first time in decades. "We didn't know." "You didn't care." Eleanor's voice could have frozen hell. "You saw a man who might be worth money, and that's all that mattered." Silas tried one last gambit. "Kill us then. Get your revenge." "Death's too easy." Eleanor gathered the confessions. "You're going to live with this. Every name you wrote, every family you destroyed. They'll haunt you forever." Samuel spoke up. "There's more. Show them the telegraph." Eleanor produced a message from the Pinkerton Detective Agency. They'd been investigating the 3 hunters for 2 years, building a federal case. Eleanor's evidence would guarantee convictions. "Prison or exile," she offered. "Sign these confessions. Leave America forever, or hang for your crimes." The mine shaft filled with desperate calculation. 3 killers realizing they'd been thoroughly defeated by careful planning and patient rage. The dynamite fuse burned toward enough explosives to bury them all. Eleanor had given them 10 minutes to decide. Sign and run, or die together in the dark. "You're bluffing," Silas tested, though sweat betrayed his fear. Eleanor lit a cigar from the fuse. "Thomas loved caves. He studied geology before medicine. Did you know limestone conducts blast waves perfectly? This whole mountain will come down." Dutch made the first move, lunging for Samuel's gun. The brothers were ready. Samuel's boot caught Dutch's jaw, while Eleanor's derringer appeared from her sleeve. The shot took Dutch's ear clean off. He collapsed, howling. 9 minutes, Eleanor announced. Jedediah had been working his ropes against a sharp rock. They snapped free. He grabbed Eleanor's wrist, spinning her as a shield against Samuel. His knife pressed her throat. "Call it off, or we all die together." "Then we all die." Eleanor's calmness terrified him. "Thomas is worth it." The fuse burned closer. 8 minutes. 7. Silas saw opportunity in chaos. While Jedediah held Eleanor, he crawled toward the confessions. If he destroyed them, he'd have leverage. His broken fingers reached the papers just as Eleanor revealed her second gun, hidden in her boot. The shot shattered Silas's kneecap. "The confessions have copies," she said, "hidden across 3 states. Burning those changes nothing." Samuel had retrieved his rifle, aiming at Jedediah's head. A standoff with a burning fuse as timekeeper. 6 minutes, gentlemen," Dutch broke first. "I'll sign. Get me out. I'll sign everything." His surrender dominoed the others. Jedediah released Eleanor. Silas stopped reaching for weapons. They signed with shaking hands, each signature a nail in their coffins. Eleanor produced 3 packages. Ship passage to Australia, leaving tonight from San Francisco. New identities, $500 each. Never return. Never contact anyone from your past. Never practice bounty hunting again. "That's it?" Jedediah couldn't believe it. "That's mercy. More than you showed Thomas." Samuel cut the fuse with 40 seconds remaining. The hunters didn't know Eleanor had used fake dynamite, just gunpowder and clay. The psychological damage was already done. They loaded the hunters onto a prison wagon Eleanor had prepared. Iron bars, no windows, heading west toward the coast. She'd paid the drivers triple to ensure delivery. The hunters would reach their ship beaten, humiliated, but alive. Before they left, Eleanor showed them one final document. Thomas's last letter, written the morning he'd left. My beloved Eleanor, if something happens to me, please don't seek revenge. Violence only breeds more violence. Live well, love again, be happy. That would be my greatest wish. You failed him, Silas said. No, I honored him. He wanted violence to end. After tonight, 3 of the worst killers in the West will never hurt anyone again. That's Thomas's real legacy. The wagon rolled into darkness. Eleanor stood with Samuel, watching dust settle over their 2-year plan. What now? Samuel asked. Now we disappear too. Let Eleanor Calhoun die with her revenge. Behind them, the mine shaft remained standing. The evidence would stay buried until needed. 3 murderers had signed their own damnation, choosing exile over execution. Federal Marshal William Brennan arrived in Copper Creek to find confessions that read like horror novels. 40 pages of murder, signed and witnessed. The whole town gathered as he read selected passages aloud, learning their heroes were actually monsters. The widow's hotel room held everything: bank records, photographs, correspondence between the hunters discussing their crimes. A leather journal documented 2 years of investigation. Eleanor Calhoun had built an airtight case before vanishing into morning mist. She left this for the town. Brennan held up a banker's note. $50,000 to build a hospital in Thomas Calhoun's name. The manhunt for the 3 killers ended at San Francisco's port. Ship records showed they'd sailed for Australia 2 days prior. International law prevented pursuit. They were gone forever, exiled by their own signatures. Jedediah Cross never made it to Sydney. Passengers found him, dead in his cabin, self-inflicted gunshot, unable to live with the names on his confession. The ship's log recorded his final words. The widow was right. Living is worse than dying. Silas McGrath reached Australian shores, but lasted 6 months. Bar fight in Melbourne, stabbed 17 times by men he'd cheated at cards. Local police found his confession and sent it to American authorities, confirming Eleanor's justice had traveled across oceans. Dutch Van Horn survived longest, 3 years in Queensland's goldfields. Cave-in took him. The workers swore they heard him screaming about phantoms before the collapse. His tent contained hundreds of letters never sent, all addressed to Eleanor, all begging forgiveness. The legend of the Black Widow spread through the territories. Corrupt lawmen started receiving packages, confessions they'd never written, crimes documented in detail, signed with their names in perfect forgery. The message was clear: change or be exposed. 5 years passed before anyone saw Eleanor again. A ranch outside Guadalajara, Mexico. She went by Isabella now, teaching local children to read, running a clinic with Samuel. A traveling preacher recognized her, kept the secret after she showed him Thomas's photograph. He'd be proud, the preacher said. He'd be horrified, Isabella corrected. But he'd understand. The preacher noticed her wedding ring, worn on a chain now. You still love him. Love doesn't die with the body, neither does justice. Word spread quietly among the hunted. The Black Widow still watched. Bounty hunters who targeted innocents received warnings. Those who ignored them disappeared. Some said she had a network of reformed killers doing her work. Others claimed she could appear anywhere, strike anyone. The truth was simpler. Isabella had proven something the West needed to learn. The fastest gun didn't always win. Sometimes the smartest survivor was a woman who could wait, plan, and strike when least expected. She'd turned 3 predators into prey using only patience and truth. Thomas Calhoun's hospital saved hundreds of lives. His widow's revenge saved hundreds more by removing 3 killers from the earth. The prettiest widow in the West had married justice itself, and death had been their witness. Some nights, Isabella stood under Mexican stars, speaking to Thomas's memory. "I ended the violence, my love, just not the way you imagined." The West never forgot the woman who broke its toughest hunters, using nothing but their own sins. If you enjoyed this tale of justice from the Wild West, click the like button and subscribe to the channel. Tomorrow's story will leave you equally speechless. Until then, remember, sometimes the deadliest weapon isn't a gun, but a patient heart seeking justice.